super loyal, holding matrimony. Everybody loves a happy ending, that's an allegory. This is not a pipe dream, author of my own story. La-di-da-di-da, take my time.
Well, we're here, back at the set of Screaming Creativity. Cindy Gallop, Screaming Creativity. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Rob. Thrilled to be here.
Cindy, I'm going to talk about you, and I'm going to read. There's so many accolades I'm going to read, but I'm not going to go on. You are a true force, an industry icon. You are the founder of If We Ran the World and Make Love Not Porn. That's the current Cindy. I want to talk about the previous Cindy. Very outspoken leader, activist, advocate for inclusion and for fearless creativity, which I appreciate on both fronts. The self-proclaimed Michael Bay of the business, or Michael Bay of business, because you blow up the status quo and you build a better future. I like that. So we're going to talk about also the fact that you are an advertising icon. You know, a lot of people just know you as Cindy, the founder of Make Love Not Porn, but there's a whole side to you and a whole history of you that I want to talk about because I'm also interested in, I know a little bit about it. So this is Cindy Gallop. I mean, it's got to be already the top episode, right? We're literally 20 seconds in. It's probably the top episode. You have a very cool shirt on. Tell us about this shirt. I think you can see, the cameras can see this shirt. Who makes this shirt? Who are you wearing?
Yeah, so I am wearing Stefano Pilates. Actually, interestingly, this is from his menswear line. He has a menswear line called Random Identities. And I bought this about 6 years ago, and it's actually a man's shirt. And I would love to see a man wearing it, but I just thought it was fantastic.
What size is it? I feel like, it's
pretty big. Yeah.
It's probably a little, I'm a pretty big guy, you know.
Yeah, it's a little small for you, Rob.
Little small. Cindy, everybody knows you from being out there talking about many different issues, Make Love Not Porn. But let's talk about Cindy, how Cindy Gallop became Cindy Gallop. How did you start?
Well, I started as a half English, half Malaysian Chinese person, born to English father, a Malaysian Chinese mother. Born in the UK. When I was 6, we moved to Brunei and Borneo. So I grew up in Asia. And actually, fun fact, when I was, I think, 7 or 8 in Brunei at school, we were asked to do a project on the career we wanted to have in the future. And I decided I wanted to work in advertising.
At 8 years old?
Yeah. I think because I just really enjoyed looking at ads, and so I did this whole project. I cut out a bunch of ads and said how I thought they worked. So even back then, in the early years, advertising was bubbling around in my consciousness. But the way my advertising career really happened was. So I studied English literature at Somerville College, Oxford, and actually,
you read at Oxford? Is that, I heard that's a term now. Jonathan used that term.
Yeah.
Cindy read at Oxford.
Yeah.
I was like, did she just walk through the courtyard with a book?
No. We say I read my degree at Oxford, so I read English literature at Oxford, but actually I fell madly in love with theatre at Oxford because it has a very thriving student drama scene.
Yeah.
And so I was president of my college's drama society. I wrote, acted, directed, stage managed. And interestingly, I don't know if they still do this, but Oxford used to have a thing. They used to have a kind of careers committee that you were sent to in your third year, who would basically advise you on what you should be thinking about doing next. And the careers committee said to me, "We think you should work in advertising."
Really? And you said, I've known this since I was 8 years old.
No, I said, I don't want to work in advertising. I want to work in theatre. Because I'd fallen so madly in love with theatre that I was going, what I want to do is do theatre for the rest of my life. So the careers committee kicked me out the door. And I knew I wasn't good enough to be an actress or director, like some of my friends at Oxford actually went on to be. But I used to draw a lot when I was younger. And so I used to design theatre posters for my friends. And from there, they kind of pulled me into promoting their shows for them. And I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
So I became a theatre marketing and publicity officer. And anyway, so I worked at various theatres around the UK for several years until I got completely fed up with working 24/7 and earning chicken feed, which is what life in the theatre is.
Yeah, of course.
And just as I was beginning to feel disillusioned and I was going, okay, I'm not sure I do want to do this the rest of my life, I was the marketing officer at the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool, and part of my job was giving talks to groups about the theatre. And so I gave a talk to a group of women in Liverpool, and afterwards one of them came up to me and she said, young lady, you could sell a fridge to an Eskimo. And I thought, that is the universe telling me something. Time to sell out, go into advertising. And so I did. So that's how I got my start in advertising.
But you're so connected to BBH. So I want to talk a little bit about that, John Hegarty, like all the things that, was your look back in the 80s, was it Sid Nancy? Like, what was the Cindy Gallop look? We're going to get some photos of this, but like, I think people they don't know what the Cindy Gallop was in the John Hegarty days and the early BBH days. And then you obviously came to New York, started BBH in New York, very famously, did an incredible job there. And the company still obviously here today. But like, what was that like? What was BBH at the height?
Well, let me first of all answer your question about what I used to wear.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Because, I was basically massively into punk, and I had short, spiky hair. And by the way, what I'm about to share with you, I'm personally horrified at myself.
Has this ever been shared on a podcast before?
Possibly not.
Okay.
So
we will do the research.
I remember actually going to work when I was working at GGT, Gold Greeny's Trot, for Dave Trott. I remember turning up, as a work as a work outfit, a black PVC miniskirt and a T-shirt that said, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but whips and chains excite me." And anyone at GGT,
that's Jonathan Saturday Night, by the way.
I can't believe I did that now, so I'm not proud of that. By the way,
but why is that? I think that's a great T-shirt. You probably couldn't wear it today.
Yeah, no,
unfortunately, right?
no, and also I would never dream of wearing it today. So I'm horrified at myself.
You would never. I don't know, Cindy. I had to imagine you would. I've seen some of the outfits that you're very, risque. Is that the word we can use? So I don't know if that T-shirt's so crazy. I think it's pretty funny, unexpected. How did it go over?
Everyone at GGT loved it.
Yeah.
Obviously. Anyway, so to your question about BBH, I only got hired at BBH on the third time of trying. So what I mean by that is I began my advertising career at agency Ted Bates back in the days when it still existed.
Yeah, wow.
And I had a very happy 2 years there. And then Saatchi's bought Bates. And they offered me a job, but I didn't want to go and work at Saatchi's.
Why?
So because, as you may not recall, Saatchi's were quite unique in the UK at the time. They operated a group system where accounts were put into kind of groups within the agency.
Sure.
And your experience of Saatchi's was absolutely defined by whoever ran the group that you worked in. And so I was working on the DHL account. And so Saatchi's wanted to kind of keep the whole team, as they moved it over. So I went and interviewed with the gentleman who ran the group that DHL was going to go into. And I honestly cannot remember his name at all. But what I can remember is that I thought, there's no way in hell I want to work for you. And so that is why I did not.
But it's a good lesson for young people who will be listening to this of like, obviously work at the agencies you want to work with and hopefully, but also like find the people that you look up to, that you feel like you are going to learn from and grow from. So like, who was that person at BBH that you found? Was it John Hegarty or was it somebody?
Well, I'll come on to that, but I want to finish telling you about how I fetched up at BBH.
I love that word, fetched up. I don't even know what that means, how you fetched up, but please tell us how you fetched up.
So in 1987, decided not to go to Saatchi's and began interviewing around town in London. And I got called in for an interview at BBH, and I was in ecstasy because BBH was the hottest agency, in the UK at the time.
What year was this about, you think? 1987?
This was 1987, yeah. So, and they were looking for an account executive on a big piece of business. And I got on really well with everyone who interviewed me. And they went, this is terrific. They're really talking about which company car I wanted, et cetera, et cetera. So it was looking like a sure thing. And then they said to me, there's just one more interview. It's a pure formality. But Nigel Bogle likes to meet everybody we hire into account management. So come in, have a chat with Nigel.
And he was the big boss.
Yep,
he was
he was
obviously
he was
one of the bees.
One of the bees, yeah. And the account management bee. John Bartle was account planning, and John Hegarty obviously was creative. Yeah. So I went to BBH to meet Nigel Bogle, and it was one of those interviews where you get off on the wrong foot from the moment you step over the threshold. We did not get on, and I did not get off of the job, and I was devastated. So I went to J. Walter Thompson instead, and then from there I went to GGT. Yeah. And then I was at GGT, and this is 1989, and a headhunter called me and said they're looking for an account director over at BBH. And I went, oh, no, they've rejected me. They don't want me. And the headhunter said, well, there's, meet Mike Willis, the head of account management. She persuaded me against my better judgment to go and interview. Got on really well with Mike, got on really well with everybody all over again. They went, we love you. Just, one more interview.
One more formality.
Come and meet Nigel Bogle. And I went, okay, it's all over. Right, fine, here we go again. So I went over in fear and trembling to meet the Nigel Bogle, and Nigel Bogle walked into the interview room, and he was holding a piece of paper, and he said to me, I hope you're impressed with our filing system. So I thought what he was holding was my resume from a couple of years back. Actually, what he was holding was a letter that I had written him from the Liverpool Everyman Theatre back in 1985 when I was first looking for a job in advertising. And the moment he showed it to me, I remembered that, I had written speculatively to a bunch of agencies, but because I had no experience, no one would hire me. But B, I remembered the moment I saw that actually Nigel was the only person who had written back to me and written a very nice letter that explained that BBH was a startup agency and they couldn't hire anyone without experience. And it was and Nigel said to me, it was a completely different interview this time around. He said to me, everybody here wants to hire you, and I'm being blamed as the only person who stopped us hiring you the first time around.
Wow.
And he said, we're going to offer you a job. We hope you take it.
Oh,
and so that is how I joined BBH in 1989. And actually, what was really funny was a couple months after I joined, John Bartle took me out to lunch. Yeah. And so I joked about the fact that last time around, BBH had rejected me. And John Bartle went in his northern accent, oh, no, Cindy, I don't think that's what happened. I think, that time you were just too good for the agency. Mm. And I went, I love this revisionist history that's being written.
Of course. Too good for the agency. Yeah. You used a phrase just now, which is you were not fearless. You were trembling. You're fearful and trembling. I don't know what
in fear and trembling.
In fear and trembling.
Yeah.
Let me get that correct. You used a phrase in fear and trembling, which two phrases and words that I don't even associate with Cindy Gallop. Being in fear of anything and trembling over any situation. Why is that? Why do you have this persona, whether it's fully true or not, that you are fearless? I've never seen you tremble. You probably made other people tremble, not in a bad way, but just calling them out. So where did that come from? Because it obviously wasn't always the case.
So, it's funny, Rob, because people use a lot of words about me, like fearless, etc. And I would never describe myself in that way because as far as I'm concerned, all I'm doing is I'm being me. Mm. I am living my values. I am speaking my truth. And the fact that other people construe that as fearless says a lot more about how most people operate than it does about me.
Expand on that if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I've said for many years that, I don't know how this happened. There was not one moment of blinding revelation, but, one of the best moments in my life was when I realized I don't give a damn what anybody else thinks. Mm. Because fear of what other people will think is the single most paralyzing dynamic in business and in life. You will never own the future if you care what other people think, but too many people do. And so my recommendation is, I say to people, if you've never done this exercise, take a long, hard look inside yourself and identify what you stand for, what you believe in, what you value, what you're all about. First of all, because that makes life so much simpler. Life still throws at you all the shit it always will, but you know exactly how to respond to that shit in any given situation in a way that is true to you. That is the secret of happiness. Living your life, working your work in a way that is true to you. And then that is what gives you the confidence to not care what other people think.
Yeah.
Because all that matters is that you know you're being true to yourself.
Yeah. And you're not saying be reckless. You're just saying like be true to yourself, which is a great advice for many people. You're famous for many things, but your TED Talk around make love, not porn. We can talk about that. But also you said I think you like having sex with younger guys. That's a pretty bold statement to say on stage in doing a TED Talk. Obviously the subject was make love, not porn. But just so people understand the site, the platform, because, you know, from on paper, someone might read it a different way, and you've explained it, but for this audience and for the WPP audience, I'd love for you to explain how it started, but really the meaning behind it.
Sure. What I will also do, Rob, for this audience, because I think they'll appreciate it, is explain how I came to date younger men in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I moved here in 1998 to start up BBH New York. And a couple of years later, actually this would have been, I think, around 2002, we were asked to pitch for an online dating brand that was coming out of the UK and wanted to launch in the US and take on Match, the big player at the time. This brand was called UDate. And as we all know, when we pitch for a client's business, we have to experience the client's product and the entire competitive landscape. So we all had to online date. And this is, 23 years ago. And none of us on the pitch team at BBH New York ever had, because online dating wasn't the thing back then that it is now. It's very much an emerging sector. Now, the rest of my pitch team at BBH New York were all already, living with, dating, married. So they all went online as fake personas. They created false identities. I was single. I thought, okay, I've got to do this for business reasons. Why not do it for real?
Yeah. I can build this.
Why not find out what this whole online dating thing is all about? So I posted my profile, on our client's site, on a bunch of other sites. I was very honest about everything, including my age. I got a ton of responses, which was very good for the ego. Yeah. But much to my surprise, because I had not previously identified this as a dating strategy, 75% of those responses were from younger men.
Like
and the majority
how
of those
much younger?
Were much younger men. In their 20s, 19-year-olds.
And you were in your 30s at the time?
I was in my early 40s at the time. Yeah. So,
I don't think that's it's a fantasy of many 20-year-old guys.
No, exactly. I suddenly realized that I was every young guy's fantasy. Yeah. I was an attractive older woman, high-flying career, did not want to settle down, did not want to get married, didn't want to have kids. All I wanted to do was have some fun, which at the time, having started up an ad agency in the world's toughest advertising marketplace, working 24/7, traveling a lot, fun was severely missing from my life. So I thought, wow, okay, hadn't identified this as a dating strategy, works for me. And I've been dating younger men very happily ever since.
So this is before Tinder, so you might have invented Tinder before its time. No. You were way before its time.
So there I was dating younger men 17, 18 years ago, which is how I began realizing that I was encountering very intimately and personally what happens when we do not talk openly and honestly about sex, and porn therefore becomes sex education by default in not a good way. So I found myself encountering a number of sexual behavioral memes in bed. I went, whoa, I know where that behavior is coming from. Yeah. I thought, gosh, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be as well. I didn't know that because 17 years ago, no one was talking about this. No one was writing about it. This is me in isolation as a naturally action-oriented person going, I'm going to do something about this. So 16 years ago, pure little side venture, I put up on no money a tiny clunky website at makelovenotporn.com that in its original version was kind of a public service announcement. Yeah. Porn world versus real world. Here's what happens in the porn world. Here's what really happens in the real world. I launched it at TED in 2009. I became the only TED speaker to say the words, come on my face, on the TED stage, several times in succession. The talk went viral as a result, and it drove this extraordinary global response to my tiny website that I had never anticipated. Thousands of people wrote to me from all around the world, young and old, male and female, straight and gay. pouring their hearts out, telling me things about their sex lives and their porn watching habits they'd never told anyone before. And I realized I'd uncovered a huge global social issue.
For sure.
And so that was when I felt the responsibility to turn Make Love Not Porn into something more far-reaching, helpful and effective. And so that is how Make Love Not Porn became, as I like to put it, the badly needed documentary to porn's Hollywood blockbuster movie.
You've heard it here on Screaming Creativity. Cindy pretty much invented Tinder and pretty much invented OnlyFans. I mean, it's an interesting thing.
It's actually true.
Because obviously something like OnlyFans has exploded, and now you have people that are celebrities or former celebrities that are on the site and using it and monetizing, like giving people access. But like, I do think it's a fair statement to pay artists. I mean, that's why it's called starving artists.
And actually, on the monetization front, Rob, there is another revenue stream I conceived that I very much want to encourage our listeners to bear in mind, because I absolutely designed Make Love Not Porn to be able to do paid brand partnerships. Okay. And this is something that I've been championing in our industry for many years, because we are talking about the one area of universal human experience that brands are failing to leverage. And let me explain what I mean by that. People have sex in cars, especially in markets where, for socio-cultural reasons, premarital sex is frowned upon. In markets where young people live at home with their parents till they get married,
yes,
which, by the way, is now also the US, given the economy. Or in markets where it's traditional for whole families to live together commonly in households, so even husbands and wives can't find privacy to be intimate. So all around the world, a huge number of people are having a huge amount of sex in a huge number of cars. But the automotive industry is spectacularly failing to factor this into product design and marketing. Even more fundamentally, people have sex in bed, but the mattress industry focuses all its R&D on sleep. People have sex on kitchen counters, but the kitchen industry is failing to take that into account with height, width, depth, comfort. The point being, there is a far broader business application of all of this, and brands are leaving money on the table when they do not leverage that.
I'd love to see the designs for how would you enhance the car?
I've been trying to make an automotive partnership with Make Love Not Porn, and ideally a media platform, to promote it, happen for years. So, and by the way, seriously, if you marketed a car globally with "this car is great to have sex in," you would sell a ton of models. So first of all, obviously, lie flat seats, like really, really lie flat, as opposed to, only going back a little bit. Retractable steering wheel, retractable gear shift, all of that stuff that you have to like clamber over and, etc. The ability to change the lighting to sex mode. Okay, so, because at the moment it's either lit or it's not, and the ability to be able to have that technology where you instantly frost the windows over so no one can look in from the outside.
That exists. That exists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, there are a ton of ideas I have. So I would love anybody listening to this, working on a car brand, let's talk.
If you're listening now, this is not free of charge.
No,
you need,
you're going to pay us for
pay
this
Cindy
yes.
this for sure.
Yes,
this is
exactly. Exactly.
We're smart here at the corporation. But I think it's something that, inventing things, and we have a rapid fire at the end, and one of the new questions, and Jonathan and Alex write these questions, is what was the last thing you invented? And you just told an idea for the last thing you invented, but like, what's the actual last thing that you've made in the world? And it doesn't have to be a product; it could just be a platform or a philosophy. But like, what's the last thing Cindy Gallop invented?
So I have concepted an ad tech product, which I plan to proof test on my own platforms, at Make Love Not Porn first, and then turn into an ad exchange that plugs in everywhere else. But this ad tech operates on the complete opposite of the existing ad tech model, which, as you know, is reach, eyeballs, clickbait, and a ton of fraud. I want to build ad tech that serves ads that people actively want to watch. So much so it'll be destination viewing in itself, which is why I'm calling it Here for the Ads. You'll find a holding page at herefortheads.com. And there are 3 reasons why people will want to watch the ads that my ad tech serves. The first is that, when I can get funding, and by the way, ad industry funding, and build an MVP, I'm going to open it up to everyone like me who is currently banned for advertising. Which, as I've said, is a very broad swathe of companies, but also it's not just small businesses like mine, it's the big players. My friends at Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Essity, Reckitt, they can't advertise Sanpro, condoms, lube the way they want to either. So huge revenue generator. And so the first reason people will want to see these ads is because they're for products that help us all in these intimate areas of lives that, you can't see anywhere because they're banned. So at a pure baseline informational awareness level, they want to see these ads. But the second reason people will want to watch these ads is because on Here for the Ads, you can advertise any bloody way you like. No censorship, no holds barred. And I use the term bloody advisedly because Sanpro ads forget the blue ink on the pad, bring on the blood, have fun with it. We're talking every brand and agency's dream creative brief. Be funny, engage and entertaining in all of these areas, which is why Here for the Ads will have a share button. People are going to want to forward these ads to everyone they know. This will be the only ad tech where going viral is a built-in feature, not a happens by chance. And the third reason is at Make Love Not Porn, we operate human curation. This is ad tech you apply to be allowed to advertise on. Our curators will vet every brand and piece of advertising to decide whether your brand has got to be legitimate, and we endorse it. But secondly, to your point, is your advertising sufficiently engaging and entertaining and of enough quality to be served on a channel that is only for ads that people actively want to watch? And what I'm out to do with this, Rob, is to prove concept. Because the people currently banning us all for advertising don't know what we'd like if they allowed us to. They just think we're really bad. When I can show you an ad channel where, the brands are legitimate, the sky does not fall, the ads are fantastic, people love them, they're going viral at rate knots, we're making a shit ton of money. That is when, as I say, not only can I turn this into an ad exchange that plugs in everywhere, I help break down the barriers for advertising for all of us across the internet as a whole.
Well, you're a hustler, Cindy. So, this is not, have you always been a hustler? Have you always been this person that finds the white space and runs to it?
One of my favorite quotes of all time is Alan Kay, who said, in order to predict the future, you have to invent it. I'm all about inventing the future. Too many people think the future is something that happens without us, rolls us over in its wake. I'm all about decide what you want the future to be, make it happen.
So, again, we talk so much about AI, but I'm interested how it plays in your life, personal life, how you use it, and how does it work in your ventures, whether it's Here for the Ads, whether it's Make Love Not Porn. Is it affecting, even that world?
So I have had an AI product in the pipeline at Make Love Not Porn for 5 years. And you haven't yet seen it because, again, it needs funding. Yeah. But this came out of a conversation with a friend whose background is AI and machine learning 5 years ago, who assures me this is possible. So as you know, OpenAI, ChatGPT, etc., built on LLMs, large language models. I have something very unique at Make Love Not Porn. I have an LVM. I have a large video model, which is the world's only pool of 100% human-curated, fully consensual, real-world sex video content. I want to use AI to turn that into an algorithm for consent with a number of use cases across different industries, because this is not a consumer application, this is an enterprise application. And I'll give you a couple of examples. The first is Hollywood. And I say that because right now, all around us in popular culture, we are surrounded by sex scenes that purport to be consensual, but are actually modeling non-consensual behavior. Whether it is Game of Thrones, where pretty much the only way anyone ever has sex is rape, or it's rom-coms, where even in a love story, when they get to the sex scene, there is zero foreplay, instant penetration, zero communication, instant simultaneous orgasm. Imagine being able to run your script or your film through an algorithm that will tell you whether what you are modeling is or isn't consensual behavior. Second use case, very obvious one, criminal court. Because as I think we all know, something like only 1% of all rape cases ever make it into the judicial system. Something like 0.00 whatever percent ever result in convictions. Rape is the only crime where the onus is on the victim to prove it actually happened. Imagine being able to use an algorithm to circumvent the he said, she said of the courtroom, the entrenched bias in the mindsets of old white male judges, to define the nuances sense of whether something was or wasn't consensual. That, Rob, is the female lens on AI that is not getting funded, while right now, all around the world, the lives of millions of girls and women are being destroyed by the explosion of intimate image abuse, or deepfake porn, as it's popularly but should not be called, because it's criminal behavior.
We talked a lot about Cannes in the past and Screaming Creativity. You just mentioned Cannes and Simon Cooke. And you were the jury president of Glass Lion, and you awarded Pink Chip from AKQA, WPP agency. But tell us about that and why you were such a champion of that idea. And again, when the jury president is a champion of an idea, it's always helpful in a room. But I think, again, awards are the byproduct of doing the right thing out in the world and for our clients. So, of course, you wanted to win, but it won in the world and was important. So why did you see an idea like that, which is about financial power, and giving it back to women or giving it to women? Why was it so important for you to highlight that piece of work?
Well, bear in mind that this was the jury's opinion,
sure.
as well as mine. But what we really loved about the Pink Chip campaign was that it basically used data to demonstrate that investing in women is a bloody brilliant business idea. Because too many people make the mistake of thinking, you're urging people to do the right thing. And actually, Pink Chip was all about, when you invest in women, bloody hell, you see phenomenal returns. Yeah. And it landed that point superbly.
Awesome. Okay, Jonathan's holding up the sign because you have to go do something great for WPP. You're speaking to a large group of people about many things, but thank you for doing that. This is the rapid fire. We wrap it up with rapid fire. My favorite part of the show. Last song you listened to?
Last song I listened to was probably Chapel Roan's Pink Pony Club.
Great song. What's your secret or hidden talent?
I speed read.
You speed read? Wow. That's a great talent.
It's very useful.
I'm stunned by I'm stumped by this speed reading as a hidden talent. A brand you can't live without.
Monkey 47 gin in my martinis.
Oh yes, I'm glad we brought up the martini. It was 9:45 when we started, so usually we wait till 11 o'clock here to have the martinis. What do you do to unplug and recharge your own creativity?
I was asked something similar on a podcast about entrepreneurship.
Not as good as a question, probably.
No, I'm sharing this because I think our audience will enjoy this. I was asked, Cindy, it's obviously very stressful building Make Love Not Porn. Do you have a daily self-care routine that enables you to de-stress? And I went, oh, yeah, I absolutely have a daily self-care routine. My daily self-care routine is I have no husband, I have no children. That is precisely how I get to unplug all the time.
Yeah. Well, my wife, Laura Bowles, the great Laura Bowles, has often told me that I am a pain in the ass. So,
just her?
Go-to karaoke song.
Go-to karaoke song. Oh, my God. Do you know, I haven't done karaoke in a very long time. But I guess it would be... probably, honestly, a Taylor Swift song. There are so many, but
yeah, they are so many.
I'm a huge fan of Taylor Swift, so it'd be something by Taylor Swift.
Interesting. I would have. For some reason, I always think you're listening to the Sex Pistols or something. Very British. The Pogues, maybe.
I'm not great in the karaoke, so
yeah. Best compliment you've ever received?
Gosh,
it's a great question.
It is a really good question. Interesting. I guess I find it hard to respond because I'm lucky in that I get a lot of compliments, which is lovely from people who follow me on social and tell me how I've changed their lives. Honestly. The one that really, I think this is probably the best compliment. So, I get a lot of people messaging on LinkedIn, really appreciating, things I do or post or whatever. But a woman messaged me on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and she said, you are the reason that I'm alive today. She said, I saw you speak. She was from a Latin American country. She said, I saw you speak at a conference in Latin America years ago. And because of what you talked about, I got myself out of an abusive relationship. If I'd stayed, I'd be dead. You are the reason I'm alive. And I went, bloody hell.
Well, that's the best answer to that question that will ever be given. So how awesome is that? If you could hang out with one fictional character, who would it be?
James Bond.
James Bond. We've getting a lot of James Bond. This is a good one, I'm not going to ask why.
Because life would be enormously exciting.
I think it's true. And the martini, of course.
Yeah,
precisely. The shaken, not stirred.
Yeah.
Assist from JS. This is a tough one. And if you only can have one, just because of time, 3 items on your bucket list.
Do you know, I feel incredibly lucky because I feel, I'm 65.
Yeah.
And
you look great.
No, this is what 65 looks like. Because, and I say that, Rob, because as you know, I'm very much about combating ageism. And so the automatic response when I say how old I am is symptomatic of, you don't look, no, this is what 65 looks like.
I get that all the time. People are like, you look 25. Yeah, I know.
But
I'm 55.
But honestly, I've lived a really great life, and I can't think of anything that I'm yearning to do. I don't have a bucket list. My only bucket list item, honestly, is that I desperately want to raise the funding I need for Make Love Not Porn to scale it so that it can achieve its mission, which is to help end rape culture globally. I want to know that I've played a really effective part in that, and I can't do that without the funding I'm looking for. That's the only thing. Otherwise, I'm good.
It's a good thing to put on the bucket list. If you weren't doing this career, what career would you be doing? I mean, I feel like you've got many careers going already, but what do you think you'd be doing?
Do you know, again, there is nothing else that I yearn to be doing. With Make Love Not Porn, as the saying goes, the path appeared. I didn't choose it, it chose me. And I can't conceive of doing anything else. So no, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing.
I like it. It's the non-answer answer, which is a good one. Last question. And I'm sure many people will be listening to this. One piece of advice you'd give your teenage self.
That's really easy. Start working for yourself as soon as possible. Because, I grew up in a generation where it was all about, you study hard, you go to a good university, you get a good degree, get a good job. The idea of entrepreneurship did not exist. And, I have no regrets, but the one thing I wish is that I'd started working for myself a damn sight sooner. And so my advice to my teenage self would be start working for yourself as soon as possible.
Well, I feel like we're all working for you because you're awesome. And thank you for doing this. And again, we'll see you in Cannes. We'll see you out in the world. And it's makelovenotporn.com. Subscribe.
Invest,
exactly. And invest in Here for the Ads and in makelovenotporn.ai.
And JonathanSanchez.com. Invest in that. The producer, director of the show, one of your best pals.
We love Jonathan to death. He's amazing.
He's the best comms person in the business.
Absolutely. Here.
Thank you, Cindy.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Rob.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Married to the game, I'm super loyal, holding matrimony.
Screaming Creativity is directed by Jonathan Sanchez, produced by Alex Davis Isaac and Adrian Chan, edited by Ogilvy, designed by Dave Towers and Martina Stisi, and music by Tax Free Nevada and Cleveland Thrasher.